Now, an independent review has found that Ofsted's initial response to the death of head teacher Ruth Perry appeared to be defensive and complacent. Ruth, as I'm sure you will know, took her own life in January last year after she found out that her primary school was being downgraded from outstanding to inadequate. This was following an Ofsted inspection.
It comes as Ofsted publishes its own Big Listen report, which identifies changes to school inspections, including plans to introduce a report card system. And we're joined now by Ofsted's Chief Inspector, Sir Martin Oliver. Mr. Oliver, can I just ask you about what is really changing as a result of these reviews? Schools won't be told the day before they're getting a review, but they'll only find out on the Monday, at the beginning of a week, if they're having a review. There won't be a single grade, but there'll be 4 grades. On education, they could be told that they are inadequate. They could be downgraded. I mean, is this really big change, or are these just cosmetic tinkerings at the edges?
Well, thank you for having me on this morning, and it's good to talk to you. So I commissioned the reviews into both the tragic death of Ruth Perry, and then commissioned the Big Listen because I wanted to hear from all the providers, but particularly also from parents and from children about our work. And that's led now to a very significant response. It's a huge release of materials that we sent out today, and there are real changes in there. Changes, as you've just talked about for the next 12 months on the single word grade, which the Secretary of State announced yesterday. But I also point out in my response there are further changes coming and ways of reducing stress, but still maintaining and indeed raising standards and being better information for parents and children on the work that is happening in education and care across England.
But it's still the case that a school could find out on Monday there's an inspection. The inspection arrives on Tuesday, and on Thursday they could find out they've been downgraded from good to inadequate. That can still happen this month, can't it?
Well, we're not going to start inspecting schools on routine inspections until the end of September, the 23rd of September, and then through into October we do something called ungraded inspections. But yes, we will still hold schools accountable for the quality of education and care using the current framework, just without the overall effectiveness grade, and then we'll be consulting and working hard with not just trade unions but teachers and parents and children to build a new report model, a report card style model from September 2025.
I wonder what you think has really gone wrong. When I think back to inspectors I worked with, Chris Woodhead, David Bell, Christine Gilbert, they were always tough in their judgments, on parents' side. They didn't give lots of notice. If a school was inadequate, they said so, but they did so, I think, with the support of school leaders. Is the problem in the past 7 years with your predecessor, Amanda Spielman, that something went wrong with the culture, that Ofsted became defensive, didn't communicate, didn't even contact Ruth Perry's family after her death? Is this fundamentally not about Ofsted's inspection, but that the leadership and culture failed in recent years?
No. My predecessor was the longest-serving chief inspector, and I've a tremendous amount of respect for her. You'll know better than anyone, Ed, that if you go back 14 years or so ago, 15, 16 years ago, that the accountability system, of which Ofsted is just one part, changed, and so that consequences based on the back of an Ofsted inspection started to happen, and that put pressure both on our inspectors and on those being inspected all around the inspection. So I'm looking forward to working with the Secretary of State now to still keep accountability high, make sure that schools and all the providers, because Ofsted doesn't just inspect schools, 22,000 of them in England, but there are 92,000 people that we inspect and regulate from early years all the way through to further education. We'll be able to hold them to account, but in a far more proportionate way, and make sure that we are giving better advice. And that's why there's also announcements talking about regional improvement teams that are coming from Labour. So
things didn't go wrong with Amanda Spielman, they went wrong with Michael Gove, the Secretary of State, when he changed the inspection regime?
Well, you could go back as far as you like. I'm more interested now, Ed, in building a model going forward, and taking this Big Listen is it's a really unprecedented step for a government department to take this level of transparency. And now I'm really excited to announce the changes and to start working with people to build a better future.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin, Oliver. I know you've got other interviews to go to, and we'll look forward to talking to you again in a couple of months' time to see how the new system is working. We appreciate you coming on today. And
we can get a response to that from Ruth's sister, Professor Julia Waters, who has advocated for the reform of Ofsted. A very good morning to you. It's nice to have you on the programme. You're obviously hearing what Martin had to say there. He said that it was a very significant response and that Ofsted are changing things that will improve. And hopefully no other head teacher will have to go through what your sister experienced, which was being shaken and completely left isolated after having to speak to these inspectors and carrying the burden and feeling incredibly, incredibly distressed. What do you think of what you've heard just now?
Well, I can understand why Sir Martin Oliver wants to focus on the future and wants to focus on change. But he does need to acknowledge the failings of the very recent past. And if he's not prepared properly to address those, then the future will not look as supportive and rosy for the teaching profession as he professes he wants it to be.
And Julia, you know, people will obviously have heard of your sister's story, but I suppose the point you've been making in all of your campaigning is that while she may have been the person who very sadly took her own life, she wasn't alone in experiencing this level of distress. What kind of things have you heard since your sister's story came to light?
Well, there are other examples, sadly, of teachers and head teachers taking their own lives associated with Ofsted inspections. But actually, since Ruth's death, I've been contacted, and I continue to be contacted this year by head teachers who have gone through the most harrowing experiences of inspection with really haunting echoes of what my sister went through. Hundreds and hundreds of teachers who contacted me.
Yeah, because I think as parents, you know, you don't really know what happens inside a school.
The high-handed kind of disrespectful attitude of inspectors. I've had them described as, you know, people coming in with a God complex. I mean, Christine Gilbert mentions in her report that Ofsted inspectors themselves told her that too often inspectors have been able to get away with being unpleasant, and there are no effective performance management processes within Ofsted, that people have no feedback on their inspections after probation, for instance. I mean, that's a shocking revelation of the sort of levels of incompetence and chaos within an organisation that holds schools to account.
And for those who might say, look, you know, in this case of your sister's school, there were problems with the safeguarding reporting. I don't suppose you've ever said that that wasn't the case. There was a sort of issue around how they were recording that. But is it the case now that you think that with the changes, with the getting rid of these single word responses to, you know, outstanding, inadequate, will that help that sort of narrative of going, look, the education is great, these things need sorting, but we're going to support you to get those things sorted. You're not a terrible person. Your career hasn't gone to waste. Your reputation is still intact. Because I think that when you're feeling that pressure from somebody criticising you, you can think, all my life's work is gone.
Well, it's not just how people are treated. It was the system that was in place where there was a pretty much automatic academisation order after an inadequate judgment, irrespective of the extent of the problems that were found. I mean, the coroner found in my sister's case that those safeguarding record-keeping issues that you said, the inspectors themselves said they could be fixed before the report came out. But still, Ruth faced the consequence of losing her job. The lead inspector had said during the inspection that no child was at risk. They knew who to go to, that the school had a robust culture of safeguarding. But still, Ruth was facing the shame and humiliation of that single word judgment and the consequences of quite likely losing her job. So there are changes that are being introduced now that will prevent that kind of situation from happening. But Christine Gilbert's report reveals an institutional culture that is just chaotic, that's been poorly led for ages, lack of communication internally, externally, no critical incident response processes, no proper performance management processes. I mean, it is shocking to read that, and to read that from a public body that holds schools to account for their systems, for their record keeping, for their support of staff is really quite...
Well,
it's shocking and it's hypocritical.
Julia, we've had lots of viewer comments this morning, and a lot of them will be reflecting on what you've said and saying we recognise this distress and the stress that you are advocating against on behalf of your sister. And I hope that there is... We all need our schools. We need head teachers to feel confident. We want our teachers to feel confident because our children need them. So let's hope that your campaigning isn't in vain, and let's hope that Ofsted do change what they need to change for the benefit of all of us, actually. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
It's a big job.
It is a big job. Julia, thank you so much, and we wish you all the best. And we're so sorry for your loss, of course, because that must be still a very visceral pain for you in your life.
That is right, but
it is.
Julia's
not helped by Ofsted.
Julia's campaigning and Ruth's legacy will be a better inspection system for the future.
Yeah, let's hope so.
And that's an important thing. If you've been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.